So let's go to the economic response to the current health crisis. You won't be surprised to learn that every single thing has now been watered down. So originally the conversation was, oh, let's do a universal basic income. I remember early on when Trump gave his first address from the Oval Office, he said in his speech, we're going to cover the price of the healthcare for the coronavirus. Immediately after, the health insurance companies came out and said, we didn't say that. We said we'll cover the testing. So it went from covering costs of the healthcare to just the testing. That was gone. The UBI thing started out with a conversation about UBI. Then some of the Democrats stepped in, including Pelosi and Schumer, and they were like, we want to means test it. And then boom, it was down to means tested. There was a conversation about recurring payments. Boom, that's down to one payment. So it is like exactly what you thought would have happened with how much of a swamp Washington, D.C. is. That's exactly what happened. Namely, all of the bailouts of corporations, the conversation has only gone more in their favor. Let's bail them out more. Let's give them a slush fund. Let's get rid of all the rules attached to a bailout. They did that. At the same time, they're just saying, and Ken Klippenstein put it on Twitter perfectly, they're trying to figure out exactly how many pennies to give the average American to stop the economy from collapsing, but not a penny more. How much money do we have to give to the average American so that the economy doesn't collapse, but they have nothing extra? That's literally what they're trying to do right now. And it's infuriating. So here's Jeff Stein reported on this here. By the way, I love Jeff Stein. He's one of the few like really serious reporters. And I think he does a wonderful job. So I just wanted to say credit to you, Jeff, for following this stuff and making everything digestible. But here's what he says. Here's where Senate GOP ended up on checks. $1,200 for all individuals earning up to $75,000 a year, or $150,000 for couples. $500 per child. $0 for those above $99,000 a year. And it's based on 2019 return or 2018 return. And it is not recurring. It's a one-time check. And there used to be a phase-in, but now the phase-in is eliminated. Okay, so that's a terrible idea. What they should have done, and Rashida Tlaib actually proposed a bill on this front, is prepaid debit cards to all Americans. Now, for the Americans at the higher end who arguably don't need it, you could just get that money back through taxes at the end of the year. Tax them an extra, and her number is $2,000 a month. So tax those people all that money back. But the point is, it's a lot easier to, cut those debit cards and get them out there right now, as opposed to a weird middle grounds means-tested thing, which could potentially take longer. So it went from UBI to now not UBI, one payment, and it's means tested. And if the full amount is for $75,000 and under, and then over 99,000 people get nothing. So, it's such a weak plan, because also, like, plenty of people who are in solidly upper middle class, who are making over $100,000 a year, a lot of them are going to lose their jobs too in this economy. Guys, we'll get to the story later, but we're talking over 20% unemployment, which might hit us, which is Great Depression levels. So your little, Weasley middle ground of here, take a little bit of money, but not that much. Like, it's not going to do it. Now, you could say, hey, maybe those people can apply for unemployment. True. But at a time like this, like, the amount of money that we're talking about here for the level of crisis, especially a one-time payment, it's not going to do it. So you're going to want to have to revisit this in a month, which you're almost certainly going to have to do, because things are not going to go back to normal after a month. So on top of cutting people checks, they need to do like an eviction freeze, a mortgage payment freeze, a rent freeze, all the big bills, student loans. You need to freeze those payments and give people basically effectively an allowance to continue to subsist during this crisis. But I really don't like this means-tested middle ground nonsense, and I really don't like the fact that it's a one-time payment, because it's not going to save people. There's still going to be so many people left behind by this, and I don't think that's okay. Now, here's where else the bill fails miserably. Take a look at this. So this is from a senior Democratic aide, and here's some of the major flaws in the bill. This is what McConnell basically wanted. McConnell's corporate slush fund. McConnell bill includes $500 billion corporate slush fund. Bill has weak stock buyback language that can be waived by the Treasury Secretary. Executive compensation limits only last for 2 years. Language on worker retention is weak and includes easy outs for companies. There are no assurances in the language that workers will benefit, so they can still find loopholes and fire workers, is what they're saying here. Language provides little transparency of the lending done by Treasury, the amount and not to whom the money's being sent. So Steve Mnuchin gets to pick who gets the bailouts and why, and he'll probably give it to whichever lobbyists, are the most corrupt and slick and smooth talking. There's no specific provisions to protect individuals from eviction, foreclosure, or forbearance. Trump initially indicated he would do that, but now, they're not talking about that anymore. They have no provisions to protect people on that front. Other major problems include no money for state and local governments, no additional SNAP funds, which is necessary now, that's food stamps, no OSHA language to protect workers, no expanded emergency leave provisions, only 3 months of UI, insufficient length given scope of crisis. Direct payments are not available to the millions of people who did not file a return in 2018 or 2019. In theory, they could file a return, but millions won't. No funds to help with the treatments of the uninsured, and does not provide adequate relief for the 44 million federal student loan borrowers. Okay, so here's the best way to sum it up. When it comes to the corporate bailouts, they were like, everybody shut up, everybody shut off your brain. We're going to put together a $500 billion corporate slush fund. We're going to give it out to whoever we want to give it out to, whichever companies we want to give it out to, and we're going to have super weak rules that the Treasury Secretary could waive if he wants. So if companies want to get a bailout, fire a bunch of their workers, and then do stock buybacks, which just artificially pumps up, their own stock price, hey, they could do that. So in other words, what we're looking at here is a very similar situation to the 2008 subprime mortgage crisis and Great Recession, where a lot of the bailouts of Wall Street had no strings attached, and then these same companies, which just made terrible decisions, crashed the world economy, bankrupted their own companies, they gave bonuses to their executives as if the executives did a good job. And then they had the nerve to say publicly, well, we have to pay bonuses because we have to retain their talent. We have to retain the talent of the executives. So think about that. This bailout bill is turning into Naomi Klein shock doctrine 101. Corporations trying to rob the taxpayers, loot the Treasury, have few or no strings attached, bail out themselves, screw over workers, and then again, in the middle of a crisis like we have right now, a pandemic, no provisions to protect individuals from eviction, foreclosure, forbearance, weak support for workers, and no relief for 44 million federal student loan borrowers. Unforgivable. No money for hospitals. Unforgivable. No money for the uninsured who might need treatment. Unforgivable. So what happened is last night, Democrats voted against this. Came up for a vote. Democrats voted against this. Good. So what does McConnell do? He goes, tomorrow, when the market opens, we're going to reintroduce the bill and we're going to make the Democrats vote against it again. And then when the Democrats vote against it and the market tanks, the Republicans will turn around and go, see? The Democrats aren't taking this crisis seriously, and look at them. They're sitting around as the market tanks even more. Blame the Democrats. That's evil genius right there. But if you're the Democrats, what should you do? Have the House make their own bill, pass their own bill because they have the numbers, then have that sent to the Senate, make them slap down your bill, and then boom, you flip the script right back. What are you talking about? We passed a perfect bailout. Look, we have all the provisions that we need. We know for sure we're taking care of workers in ours. There's no stupid bailouts. We have rules and strings attached to our bailouts of corporations. So, but we're looking after people. We're stopping foreclosures. We're doing all that stuff. And okay, here, if this is as big of a crisis as you say, and we agree it is, pass our bill. And then when McConnell doesn't, they get to go, look, you're not taking this seriously. You tank the market. So this is what's happening right now. But the bottom line is, All the populist head fakes that the Republicans did early on, they were just head fakes. They were just head fakes. Trump talking about stopping the foreclosures, talking about universal basic income, all head fakes, all of them. To be fair, the Democrats also were not good on the UBI, and they were more than happy to means test it, and they, in fact, led the charge on that front. But Republicans were like, yummy in my tummy. I agree. Means test it. Reduce the amount of money that goes to working people and just your average American, and increase. For the Republicans, it's more about the no strings attached or few strings attached corporate bailouts. That's all they really care about, because they run the Republican Party. Mitch McConnell is totally beholden to his donors. So unfortunately, we're in quite a pickle here, because the American people need relief right now. Come April 1st, people are totally screwed, man. So many people live paycheck to paycheck. They need that relief, and they need it right now. But it looks like what's going to happen is it's a deal with the devil, because some relief is going to get to workers when all this is said and done. There will be some bill where some relief gets to regular Americans. But it's almost certainly going to be tied to an unacceptable corporate bailout, which is just like 2008. And by the way, as I alluded to in a previous show, you know what's going to happen? Even if all these industries get bailouts, cruise line industry, casino industry, you name it, so many say they need a bailout. What's going to happen is business is still going to be stagnant for at least another year. And then with business floundering, what's going to happen? They're going to come back in a year and say, I need another bailout? Because they're going to. They're going to. This is what we call moral hazard. So what do you do? What do you do in a situation like this? If you bail them out, the economy is still stagnant. They're still going to lose out and eventually go belly up. What I would do is temporary nationalization of every industry that desperately needs a bailout. Temporary nationalization. This way you could keep everything functioning. You don't have to run a profit immediately. You have the taxpayers basically be the owner of last resort of all these failing businesses. And the difference is, when I say temporary, I mean temporary. When we get to a point where the businesses are firing back up, they're on their feet again, which could be a year, could be 2 years, could be 3 years before the economy really recovers. Well, then, okay, then you could turn it back over into the private marketplace, and you could have it run like a standard private company again. But to me, that's the only reasonable path I see forward, because it's very likely these businesses and these industries will still be hammered for the near future. So if you want them to stay in business, you just can't have it be private now, because nobody can make a profit in this economy with what's about to happen with 20, 30% unemployment. So I say temporarily nationalize all these industries, and this way you could keep everything going relatively business as usual, and you could basically hunker down and deal with the losses that are upcoming for the next year or two. So that's what I say, but of course they're not going to do that. But what we're witnessing now, make no mistake about it, is a bigger crisis, in my opinion, than even the 2008 subprime mortgage crisis and Great Recession was. I think this will way surpass that, and everybody needs to prepare for what they're about to see.